So in the last video, we completed the terrain mesh model. And in this video, we're going to be looking at how to extrude up the buildings that we created from the outlines that we drew in CAD. Now, we're going to be using Greeble for this process. There are several ways of doing it. You can either extrude it just as plain objects. Greeble seems to work quite nicely because it adds that extra bit of detail onto the roofs where you have those subdivided squares. And because it's a free plugin, it really does make the workflow nice and easy. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to select all of our objects. We're just going to ungroup it while we apply a new layer to it. So we're just going to add all that to the selected layer, hide it, and we're going to unhide our building layer. Now, this part here we are going to apply Greeble, the plugin to, and if you remember back from the CAD exercise, you'll notice, or you'll remember that we specified that all of the polylines should be four-sided, and this just helps with the Greeble forms so that you don't end up having odd triangle shapes. Even when we have these triangles here, we try to keep this short part making it four-sided. It's just to avoid those odd shapes popping up in our project. So if we go across to Greeble, directly onto the editable spline, we're going to scroll down the menu, and we're going to add Greeble. We know that we don't have any triangles, so we will unselect that. And into the minimum height, I've gone and pre-calculated a couple of variations, and I'm going to use 2000 here, and I'm going to use 5000 in this slot. We can play with this a little bit later. We can adjust it to the height. We can measure it just to see how high it actually is, and we can then see whether we are happy with those settings. The great thing about Greeble is it just offers so much flexibility to your model once you've created it. You can work on the entire city in one parametric area, so that's really great. I'm just going to include, I've been tweaking around with these numbers on the side, so I'm going to add the numbers that I've been using. I'm going to say 3 materials. So what we need to do now is we need to go into V-Ray and we can reset these materials since we don't need to use the texture materials anymore. So we can reset that and we can create a new material for V-Ray. I'm going to call that City Facades. Now I'm going to leave it gray for now since we need to go into Photoshop and create that material. And the next part of this video is going to be about how to create the material in Photoshop to apply to all of the buildings in one go. Now just before I go, I'm just looking at these models here and I want to basically look at changing some of these parameters. Now you can go and edit that. I know that we don't need any taper, so we can right click on that spinner. Can increase the height if we need to. Increase the size there. I think this height here we need to increase. Let's make this height 1000. We can then come back later to see if we need to pull it up any higher. Again, this is not really science, this is more art where we're trying to get the impression of the city more than the real factual thing. Remember that the difference between the architectural style is that we're trying to convey the concept of a city. We're trying to recreate the bulk and the massing. We're not really going for realism here. Whereas if you were doing this for a game, you would want to get more facade detail. You want to get that feeling of what the city is really like. Though for architectural, we're just going to leave it this simple. I know that some architects, they really love to just leave their buildings very light and gray, maybe fade them out a little bit, but we're going to add the texture map just to add a little bit more detail and a bit more realism, one notch extra. So I'm going to pause the video here or at least finish the video, and the next video will be about the Photoshop creation of the facade texture that we will then come back to into 3D Max and then apply that texture. So what we've done in this short video is we've just applied the Greeble plugin, and we're now going to be looking at how to do the texturing in the next video.